Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Pirates in the Field podcast, World Cup edition. My name is Manny Pereira. With me is Niamh Campbell. This is the third episode of this new edition of the podcast that we are doing, and it's been a lot of fun.
It has been, and we're gonna have some really good football to talk about over this episode. We're gonna be covering the second round of the group stage and then also the final round of the group stage. So everything that you need to know, we've got it covered today. So looking forward to kind of jumping right into it.
Yeah, let's jump right into it. We're gonna go through each group, our thoughts on each group. Then we're gonna give kind of our takes of teams that we like going forward, teams that we don't like going forward with the rest of this tournament. Round of 32, round of 16. I believe we won't have an episode until after the round of 16.
Yeah, planning on doing the round of 32 and the round of 16 kind of bunched together, just because those games are going to go back to back to back, and we'll get our first rest day from games on July 8th, I believe.
Yep,
so
July
we're gonna try and record an episode for you guys and get that out for you on that day instead.
Yeah, so a lot to talk about. Let's get right into it, starting with Group A, probably the weakest group in this entire tournament. But good for Mexico, who went 3-0, and I believe they're the first host nation to go 3-0 since Italy in 1990. So good for them, doing what they got to do on home soil. What do you think about the rest of this group, though, Niamh?
Yeah, I think you said it right. I think that Group A is definitely a little bit on the weaker side, which wasn't necessarily expecting having both Mexico and South Korea in that group, but some surprises that took place there. I think Group B can maybe rival that a little bit, and we'll get into that in a bit. But like you said, like Mexico had 3 wins against South Africa, South Korea, and then finished up against Czechia. Got all 9 points. First to do it, like you said, since Italy, and now they've set themselves up to be able to play in Mexico City in the round of 32 against Ecuador, and if they go on to win that game, staying in Mexico City for the round of 16. So honestly, they took care of business in terms of staying within Mexico and having that home support. But I really want to talk about this South African side, because they closed out the group stage with a 1-0 win against South Korea, something that nobody expected. And I was watching that game, and South Africa played so messy. They did not play controlled. The ball was everywhere in the midfield. But South Korea just couldn't handle that, and they didn't look settled. And it was so interesting because South Korea chose to bench Heung-min Son for that first half and brought him on in the second half. And I just feel like it was too late. Like, I know that Son hadn't really had an impact in some of those earlier games, but you're going to sit your captain and your best player in the final game that you need to win to be able to get through. And look what happens. They scored in the 63rd minute. Son had been on for 19 minutes, hadn't really gotten into the game. And so, it is what it is. And Bafana get through to the round of 32, get out to the knockout stage for the first time in their history, which was just incredible scenes at the end of that game.
Yeah, good for South Africa. They made history, especially for their nation. And you mentioned kind of the head-scratching moves from South Korea, which I think they were probably the most frustrating team in this group stage. And no one's going to talk about it that much because no one expected them to go that deep into this tournament. But everyone expected them to definitely get out of this group and to be the biggest threat for Mexico to potentially beat them in this group. So I want to go into a little bit of what happened after these losses, because they went 1-2 in the group stage. Their head coach just resigned right away. And then the country's president, when I read this first, when I read the headline, I thought it was the Soccer Federation president for South Korea. No, the literal president of South Korea. He said, Lee Jae-myung, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Forgive me if I didn't. He said that he was utterly baffled by the team's performance and blasted head coach Hong Myung-bo as incompetent, which is insane. This is from an article in the New York Post, and he called for the government to investigate the early exit. They're going to run a government investigation on why South Korea stunk in this tournament.
If that isn't dedication, I don't really know what else is.
Crazy. And you know what they have in common with us is their president goes on Twitter a lot. And he says the reason such botched appointments, which fail to distinguish between public and private interests and prioritize personal gain over the public good, are possible is that it is possible or difficult to monitor, check, or hold with appointment authority accountable. That's just a lot of kind of a word salad there. Basically, he's very obviously frustrated, and he talked about how like they put a lot of tax dollars into this and all the investment that goes into sending a team to the World Cup. But I mean, he said it utterly baffled, and that's kind of what it sounds like. It's harder to translate really, Korean to English and understand the full context. But what I'm getting here is that I think he thinks that their head coach just wasn't in it, and obviously he resigned. Very suspicious activity is what the president of South Korea is finding right now, and I think it's kind of funny, but it is kind of sad too for the fans of South Korea.
Yeah, especially when you're a powerhouse in that region as well. It's you and Japan are, the top dogs in that Asian region. So I'll be keeping tabs on that to kind of see what the president and the government uncover. Who knows what secrets lie beneath.
What would they find? I mean, if there's anyone around that like. We didn't deep dive into this story. I mean, we looked up an article, whatever. Everyone knows the headline. But if there's anyone that knows the ins and outs of South Korean soccer and government, please comment and let us know what the heck could be found or what it is that he's looking for, because this is insane. This is hilarious. But, yeah, so Czechia, I mean, 1 draw, 2 losses. Not good for them for getting to the tournament. I want to talk about just for now, and we're not going to go that deep into the next round, but this is one team I do want to talk about for the round of 32, and that's Mexico, because I wasn't impressed. I mean, I think this is by far the weakest group in the tournament. And, I mean, maybe Group B, but I think this was the weakest group. And they're playing an Ecuador team, because when we talk about Ecuador, I really want to focus on the game against Germany. And they played an Ecuador team that really peaked at the right time, I would say, and it would have been better for them to have advanced the way they did than to have beaten Ivory Coast, or have beaten Curacao, rather, 3-0, right? And tied to Ivory Coast, and then lost against Germany. I think them starting slow, waking up, winning a huge game with an electric crowd in New Jersey against a team like Germany is going to be a very dangerous matchup for Mexico, and I actually think Mexico is going to go down in the round of 32.
Yeah, I think Mexico have a very tough test, like you said, against Ecuador. Also the fact that, technically it's a home game for Mexico, but the amount of, Ecuador fans that are going to be in attendance as well, like, it is going to be an incredible atmosphere to be able to see, and, we're going to be able to sense that through the screen. And like you said, Ecuador has been kind of on that rise, and things are working at the right times for them. So I think that Mexico are really going to have to prep hard for this one if they want to be a host nation that make it through. Yeah,
we'll see. It's going to be very interesting going forward. Let's move on to Group B, where Switzerland won the group with 2 wins and a draw. By the way, against like the worst team in the group, which is crazy. Canada won 1-1, Bosnia won 1-1, and then Qatar had a draw and lost 2. 10 goals allowed from Qatar. The backline was not very good in the group stage. What did impress you the most with this group, Niamh?
Yeah, I want to talk about 2 things specifically with Group B. And, it's funny that we talk about it being the weakest group, and you mentioned Switzerland drawing with Qatar, because I was very worried about this group to begin with. When we started off with 1-1 draws across the board, I was oh gosh, like, this is going to be a rough watch. But it clicked into gear. And I want to talk specifically about those second matches that both happened. So Canada beating Qatar 6-0. And to get into the sad news before, Ismail Kone suffered a double leg break in that game against Qatar, which was just awful to have to watch and to see him go down for a player who's been doing so well for Canada in the absence of Alphonso Davies as well. But, he seems to be doing better in good spirits, which is what we like to see. Jonathan David, though, had a hat trick in that game. And I know that it was against Qatar, but still scoring in, the 29th minute, the 48th minute, and the 93rd minute, 92nd minute. He just showed up when he needed to for Canada. They needed him to be able to produce some goals, and he did that. I mentioned last episode I was a bit worried that he wasn't having that kind of attacking presence that he should, and he really started to figure that out in that game. So that was something that I was really impressed about. And the other game, Switzerland and Bosnia, kid you not, was about to turn it off because I was so bored. I was falling asleep in that game.
Yeah.
We're like 75 minutes in, and I'm like, all right, let's go. 5 goals in the 74th minute to the 97th minute, including crazy. A Bosnia red card that happened in the 80th minute. And I just want to say a quick note about the red cards. So far, we have had 10 red cards in this 2026 FIFA World Cup. In 2022, we had 4. In 2018, we had 4. So within this tournament, we've already gone past what happened in the last 2 World Cups. So, I mean, it's just been crazy in terms of the fouling and everything. But for Switzerland, it was really the bench power in that game, the super subs that came on to kind of push them past that line and be able to get them on the board. And I think that really showed to me the depth that this Switzerland squad has, and they're going to go up against Algeria in the round of 32, who are coming off of quite the performance, which I'll talk about later. But I think that Switzerland have a really good chance, and I think that they really proved it in that game against Bosnia, then went on to beat Canada. So I think that they're a team that could cause some troubles and one to look out for.
Yeah, I think so as well. We won't spend that much time on this group just because we don't believe that anyone in this group can make that deep of a run. But I do agree with Switzerland, the fact that they can make a round of 16, maybe a quarter if they win against Colombia, which is not completely off the table. But this is a team that has been a second-half squad. I mean, they scored both goals against Canada in the second half. And, by the way, that being a tough game because you have to play Canada in Canada. It's never easy to play a team on their home soil. So good for them getting the job done and doing what they have to do. They just got to find a way to start a little quicker because I don't think now maybe against Algeria you'll get away with it, but as you go on in this tournament, you play more quality teams. You cannot afford to start slow. And what's been funny is that they tied in the first game. And then the second game, it took until the 70th-ish minute to score. And then in this third game, they scored even earlier. They scored early in the second half. So, maybe they just need to kind of, I don't know, get some rust off their shoulders or off their legs. And as they go on, they've been trending in the right direction is what I'm trying to say in terms of scoring earlier and getting things done the way that they're supposed to. And by the way, I expected this Switzerland team to win this group. I believe you did so as well.
Yeah.
And they did it. So whatever. The way they did it doesn't really matter. Should they have gone 3-0? Yes, but they didn't. And at least they're peaking at the right time, and they've been trending in the right direction. So we'll see what happens moving forward in that group. Let's move on, or in that side of the bracket. Let's move on with Group C. Brazil, Morocco, Scotland, Haiti. Brazil going 2-1, 2 wins and a draw. Morocco 2 wins and a draw. Scotland 1 win, 2 losses, and Haiti no wins, 3 losses. Before you go, Niamh, the one thing I want to say is that I'm devastated that the Scots are out of this tournament. Not because I'm Scottish, not because I know anyone that's Scottish, but because I wanted to see their fans have another week or two in the United States.
I know.
Didn't happen, though. Either way, what do you think about the way this group turned out?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that actually about Scotland because I saw a reel come up the other day, and it was like all the American bar owners devastated because the Scotland fans are leaving. But yeah, I think I'll start with Scotland. It was a disappointing tournament for them. I think that they got the win that they needed to against Haiti. It was 1-0, but it was also the first game, and we kind of saw that trend with a lot of teams. They needed to get 1 point from Brazil or Morocco, and they just couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it. And, the 1-0 loss to Morocco, I was like, okay, it's not that bad. It's just 1 goal. The 3-0 loss to Brazil, that was really the nail in the coffin. And actually, after Scotland exited the tournament, their coach, Steve Clarke, also resigned from his role, which is as expected when you go out like that. But I think that there was a lot of hope for Scotland, and I think that the group that they got put in was just not ideal for them to be able to make it through. But I still think that there's a good future there for Scottish football, and I think, you know, maybe if the luck had been a little bit more on their side in terms of the draw, maybe they could have made it through, but I wouldn't count them out, and it'll be interesting to see them at the Euros in 2 years from now.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, I don't think this Scottish team is necessarily worse than a lot of the teams, really, that we see in the round of 32. I think they would have gotten out of Group B. They would have gotten out of Group A. You can argue they would have gotten out of Group G with Egypt, Iran, New Zealand, kind of that cluster. And Belgium didn't really play that well. You can argue with the way Uruguay looked, they would have gotten out of Group H.
Yep.
So I mean, you know, he resigned. It was kind of expected, but I think if they were in any other group, yes, you expect a change in the head coach. I don't know if I would have gone that far. Obviously, it seemed to have been the head coach's decision. But it's just a tough group. When you're playing Brazil, when you're playing Morocco, who are two of top 15 teams in the world, and that's probably me being a little safe there.
Yeah, we've got Brazil at 6 and Morocco at 8.
At 8, so top 10 teams in the world. It's just, I mean, it's tough to tie. That's the issue, is that, yeah, obviously you're going to beat Haiti. It's just tough to tie against one of those teams. Once they didn't do it against Morocco, I thought there was no chance in Miami that they were going to do it against Brazil. So it is what it is. I'm a little sad for them, also just because of that, because of the group that they drew. Other than that, I think Brazil, I know you're going to talk about it a little bit, so maybe we won't talk about them too much right now, but I do think they bounced back after that draw against Morocco. And you could argue, though, that Morocco, although their goal differential was +3 compared to Brazil's +6, they might have looked like the best team in this group. I think that's definitely on the table. So we'll see what happens going forward. I think both those teams are teams that we're going to talk about in the next episode. Probably both be alive. Although Morocco, I don't know, actually. Morocco got a tough draw in the round of 32.
They really do. They really do.
So we'll see what's going to happen there. Let's move on to Group D. The United States, who won the group with 2 wins and a loss. That's going to be interesting to talk about. Australia 1-1-1, Paraguay 1-1-1, and Turkey, yay, a win and 2 losses. Turkey, the most disappointing team in this tournament. I think we can both agree. But they came out with a win, although they went back to the airport, so the celebration was not kind of unwarranted. But it is what it is. What do you think about the way this group turned out?
I think that, you know, it was amazing to see the U.S. be able to top the group, to get through to the round of 32 and to win the group after 2 games, you know, with the win against Paraguay and then the 2-0 win against Australia. And to get the 2-0 win against Australia without having Christian Pulisic in the side as well, I think that the U.S. got the job done.
No doubt.
They did what they needed to do. And a lot of people are talking right now about, you know, they lost 3-2 to Turkey. Like, should we be worried? No, you should not be worried. It's okay. The U.S. played, you know, they rotated their squad. They played their B squad in that game against Turkey, and they still got 2 goals. And I think that it's a bit of an overreaction to say that, you know, oh my God, we need to start worrying because we lost that last game. It's okay. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. They're going to go into a game against Bosnia and Herzegovina, who are going to be able to give them a bit of a challenge, but I still think that the U.S. is going to kind of come through. They're going to be a good team. And, you know, Christian Pulisic is back. He played for a bit of that game against Turkey. And to kind of answer one of the questions we got sent in from Tyler, who said, if Sebastian Berhalter needed to start a knockout round for the U.S., could you trust him? So I don't think that we need to worry about that, because I do think that Pulisic is going to start and he's going to play in those knockout rounds. But it was interesting because when Pulisic was out against Australia, Pochettino put Ricardo Pepi in instead of Berhalter. And then Berhalter came in as the replacement to Pepi in that game against Australia. And then Pochettino decided, okay, I'm going to start him against Turkey. And he bagged a goal and an assist in that game. So if I'm Pochettino and I'm thinking that I need to bring someone in either to give Pulisic a rest in the second half, or like who knows what's going to happen if Pulisic for some reason cannot start a game, I'm going to go with Berhalter over Pepi, just given the fact that he's had a better output on the field and on the pitch than Pepe has. So to answer the question, I don't think that Berhalter is going to be in, but if needed, I think he's probably the best fit replacement for Pulisic right now.
Yeah, and that's not that. Honestly, that area of the field or the lineup is not necessarily my concern when it comes to the depth of the United States. I believe that our backline depth is brutal right now. And Chris Richards, please stay healthy because we need you. So I'm going to go into later in this episode how much I love the United States and their chances going forward. So for now, I'll talk about what I don't love, and that's the depth. What I just mentioned, the depth in the back line. I think it was very poor, especially that first half was brutal defensively against Turkey. So that is something that is kind of in the back of my mind, but I don't think is going to be that much of a concern. As long as we stay healthy, then this team will be fine, and I don't think we have to worry so much. And in the midfield, it is what it is. I mean, I think Pulisic's going to be healthy, but if not, I think we got more guys that can fill that role. And also, I don't worry too much about our depth offensively. Gio Reyna is not that well-served starting games. He's great coming off the bench. I think that's his role, to provide a spark off the bench. So his performance against Turkey, to me, I kind of put aside. And I think he's going to continue to do the things that he did, especially in that first game against Paraguay and the way he looked against Australia. So I'm not worried about the United States on that front. I am a little bit worried about the backline depth.
Yeah, and I don't think that is going to get challenged until the round of 16 if they make it. I think when you go against Belgium or Senegal, one of the two, I think that's when it's going to start showing. So they've still got some time to kind of work on that and to get prepared for that. Obviously, Bosnia is the first game at hand that they need to focus on. But I think if the time comes, that's when it's going to get challenged. So I think that having this Bosnia game to continue pulling together that back line and kind of building them up, I think is going to be what they need to prep themselves.
No doubt. A team I want to shout out, because we're not going to talk about them in the next episode. I doubt we will. I'd be shocked. And if you're from this country, then you can clip me. Is Paraguay. Hats off. Applause for winning that game against Turkey and advancing. No chance against Germany. But other than that, honestly, I was kind of shocked at that result against Turkey. We both thought I still think Turkey's the second best team in the group, even though they lost. So good for them, and good for Australia, who might get to a round of 16. Playing Egypt, definitely not off the table. So good for those two teams. Anything you want to say on them, or you want to move on?
I just wanted to give also a shout out to Paraguay because last episode I was worried about the South American teams, and I said that Paraguay was the one team that I was not convinced about making it through. And you did. So
good for
congrats to you guys, and looking forward to watching the game against Germany.
Good stuff. I mean, I'm not looking forward to that much, honestly. But Niamh is more optimistic than I am. Let's move on. Speaking of Germany, Group E. Group E, where Germany was the top of the group at 2 wins and a loss. What? Ivory Coast second with 2 wins and a loss as well. Ecuador, a win, a draw, and a loss. Curacao, a draw. Let's go, Curacao. Oh, boy. And then 2 losses. So what do you think about the madness that ensued in this group?
This was a wild group, and I think it didn't get wild till the end.
Yeah.
And the only reason it got wild was because of that last game between Germany and Ecuador. And I just want to highlight this incredible comeback from Ecuador in Group E, because they started off losing to the Ivory Coast in a stoppage time go-ahead goal. Like, that is just brutal to have to deal with. Then you go ahead and you draw 0-0 against a resilient Curacao team, getting their first ever World Cup point. Shout out Curacao. And then you go on to beat Germany in the final game to secure your place in the round of 32. Like, that story is just, I have no words. Yeah. Honestly, I have no words. And Ecuador didn't score for 189 minutes of play until they scored their first goal against Germany. And also, they hadn't beaten a UEFA opponent since 2013. So it had been 13 years.
Wow.
And you get the win against Germany, breaking Germany's 11-game win streak that they had been on as well. And I think, like we kind of mentioned when we were talking about Group A, this sets up such an entertaining match between Mexico and Ecuador.
Yeah.
And the fact that Ecuador is kind of on this rise right now, they're coming off of, a 2-1 win against Germany. They've got the momentum. They've got the confidence. They're like, we can take down anyone at this
doubt.
point. I think they can take down Mexico as well.
Yeah, I think they're closer to the team that beat Germany than they are to the team that lost to Ivory Coast and drew against Curacao. Which when they drew against Curacao, I was like, wow, this is the most disappointing team in this tournament. There's no way that can happen. This Ecuador team was way too talented for that. And they just responded in the exact way, not that you expected, but that if you were a hopeful Ecuadorian that spent $1,000 to sit in MetLife Stadium, which, by the way, there's a lot of those here, a very big Ecuadorian community here in the Northeast, to watch that game and just say, we're going to enjoy it. I don't know when's the next time that Ecuador is going to play a World Cup game this close. Let's just spend the money, even though they're probably going to lose. Those guys they probably expected a loss, but they were hoping for a win. They were hoping that their ROI on that ticket would be a dream come true, and it really was. And what a job by the Ecuadorians. And I also think, we both agree that they're going to beat Mexico. Are you going to pick them for sure, or do you think it's a challenge?
I think it's a challenge.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing that's going to potentially cause trouble for Ecuador is just the fact that they're playing in Mexico City. Like, that is going to be so tough.
We're in lockstep. Yep.
Any team going into Azteca is going to have a hard time,
Exactly.
already. So I think that it's really going to come down to, can this Ecuadorian side come together the way that they did against Germany? And in that game against Germany, Moises Caicedo had his best game, as he should. He's their best player. And if he can go out and have another performance like he did against Germany, I don't think that Mexico have the manpower in the midfield to be able to handle him. And that's the part where I think that Ecuador can come through with the win.
Yeah, we'll see. I personally think for the rest of this group, Ivory Coast is not a team that I see as a threat. I think they're going to lose in the round of 32 to Norway, who we're going to talk about shortly. And Germany, I have zero concern about. I think they played a super desperate team that had a home crowd. They were already locked in at the number one spot because Ivory Coast was not scoring 100 goals against Curacao. So I personally have zero concern for Germany going forward. I think this is the team. Well, they might get out of the round of 16, but it has nothing to do with their lack of performance. It has to do with the fact that they're going to play France. So, but yeah, I do you have any concern for Germany after that game?
Not after that game. No,
Okay.
I think that they'll go into their matchup against Paraguay, most likely make it through, be able to get that kind of rhythm back, and then bring that into what looks like a clash against France in the round of 16.
Which, by the way, they can win. I still think that Germany can beat France. France has played nobody, which we're going to talk about as well. So we'll see what happens going forward. Let's move on to the next group. Group F, which was probably one of the more fun groups in this entire stage. Netherlands won it with 2 wins and a draw. Japan, a win and 2 draws. Sweden, a win, a draw, and a loss. And then Tunisia, just 3 losses. And they fired their head coach, allowing 12 goals and only scored 2. Kind of a brutal tournament for Tunisia. Netherlands doing what they had to do. I think they took care of business. I expected them to win this group. But Japan's kind of frisky. What do you think about this group, Niamh?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Netherlands in a little bit because I want to talk about them kind of heading into the round of 32. But I think that when looking at this group, I expected Japan to go through as well in that second place spot. I think that they've looked like a very strong team. So I think that the game that they have coming up against Brazil is going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on. Sweden, though, managed to find their way through to the round of 32, which is kind of on theme for this Swedish team for the World Cup, because if you didn't know, the way that they got into the World Cup was they finished dead last in their qualifying group, and then the only reason they got through was thanks to wins against Ukraine and Poland in their UEFA Nations League. And now, all of a sudden, they've managed to get their way through to the round of 32 as well. So Sweden really just powering their way into the round of 32, into the knockout stages. And Tunisia, they're leaving this tournament with a goal difference of -10, which is one of the worst that we've seen ever in the history of the World Cup. Also, like you mentioned, firing your head coach in, the middle of the tournament after one game. I think that Tunisia football need to do a proper reset and figure out kind of what happened there. And it's not to say that, they were in a tough group. You had to go up against the Netherlands, you had to go up against Japan. Sweden were playing well. We'll forget about that 5-1 loss to the Netherlands that they had. But I think that they need to kind of take a look and figure out what went wrong there and where they can change stuff so that they don't come back to a World Cup and have the same performance.
Yeah, I don't expect to see them in 2030, but we'll see going forward. With Sweden, honestly, a team that is the opposite of Japan to me, because they can score the heck out of the ball, but they can also lose some pretty brutal games. And Japan, as I said, only 3 goals allowed in the entire group stage. Good for them. 4-0 win against. I know you football fans don't like when we say nothing. 4-0 win against Tunisia. 2-2 draw against Netherlands and a 1-1 draw against Sweden. Holding Sweden to 1 goal is impressive. I don't care what team you are, especially if you're not like the elites of the elites. Holding Sweden to 1 goal is a very good performance. And this is a Japan squad that I agree. I know you're going to talk about Brazil, but the way they play soccer, they play football, and Brazil kind of not sharing the load and not really kicking on all cylinders. They got 2 guys that have scored all their goals. I think they can kind of pose a threat. Again, I don't think they're going to win, but they can be frisky. I think frisky's a perfect word. Friskiest team of the tournament, Japan. And Netherlands, I really like the way they played. Again, you would have liked to see them go 3-0, but they scored 10 goals in the group stage. They did what they had to do, and they won. So good for them.
Absolutely.
Let's move on. Group G. Very weird group. Very weird group. Belgium. They won, which we expected, but not the way that we expected them to win the group. 1 win, 2 draws. Egypt, 1 win, 2 draws. Iran, 3 draws. New Zealand, a draw, and 2 losses. 10 goals allowed from New Zealand. Yikes. What do you think about the chaos of this group, Niamh?
I think chaos is literally the only way to describe it, because absolute madness going on in Group G. And to be honest, I was worried about Belgium after that 1-1 draw against Egypt. I remember us talking about it in the last episode, but Egypt went on top of that group after the second set of matches after securing their first ever World Cup win when they beat New Zealand 3-1. And then Belgium drew with Iran. So it was like, oh gosh, this might be it for Belgium. Like, who knows? Belgium did end up winning against New Zealand 5-1, so that put them into that top spot ahead of Egypt. That Egypt and Iran game, last game, ended 1-1, but Iran missed the knockout spots by 1 spot for that 3rd place position. And in that game against Egypt, they scored in the 93rd minute because it was called offsides. Yeah. And then it was half a foot offsides that the VAR saw. And so they're out. And then their fate rested on the result of Austria-Algeria. And so there was a point in the game against Austria and Algeria that I'll get to where it was going back and forth, like Austria was up, then drawed. Then Algeria was up, then back to a draw. And it just kept going back and forth. And every single time it went back and forth, it was like, Iran's in, Iran's out, Iran's in, Iran's out. And they just had to wait till the full-time whistle, and it ended up them being out. So, this Group G, I think, probably had the most movement in it. Just, like you said, absolute chaos. Yeah, chaos for sure. And honestly, after seeing the way they played against New Zealand, I thought more highly of New Zealand than I did low of Iran. I thought New Zealand played solid football. Yeah, they played a great opening game in that one. Played a very good opening game. So I was like, wow, the way Belgium looks, like this, I don't know who's going to win this group. I have no idea. And it ended up turning out maybe the way one expected. Perhaps you expected Iran to be over Egypt, but Egypt, very good tournament for them. And one comment I want to make about VAR, I wasn't angry about the Colombia offsides call when they scored towards the end of that game and the guy was offsides by, if he was 2 sizes down on his cleat, then he would have been onside. Because originally it was called offsides. And whatever, he's technically offsides. It was very close. Ref got the call right. It is what it is. Now, I don't think VAR was created
for that last-second goal where Iran scored. It seemed like they scored, no call. And then they go to the VAR, and they see he's a toe offside. That's not why the rule offside came into play for guys who are offside by a toe. And that's not why we brought in VAR. And that's kind of what that creates, though, is that you get everything super duper right, even if it's not in the, nature of the game for you to call that back. So not that I was rooting for Iran at all, but I did kind of feel like that kind of stinks. Like, that's not why this was created. But it is what it is. I'm not crying a river for Iran because I think that they should have beaten a New Zealand team that got smoked in their next 2 games, and they had more chances other than that. But yeah, that did kind of stink.
Yeah, and I think that VAR has definitely improved over the last several years, and I do think that the changes that they've made have been working, but there's always been that question, how much does it impact the flow of the game, and how much does it take away from the game itself? And, you look back 20 years, we didn't have VAR. This kind of conversation was never even in the picture, and now we're having these conversations, and, you just want to make sure that the love of the game doesn't die with technology.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move on really quick. We got a handful of groups here left. Group H, Spain won the group, 2 wins and a draw. Cape Verde, 3 draws. Wow, they advanced. Good for them. Uruguay, 2 draws and a loss. Saudi Arabia, 2 draws and a loss. I'm just going to give one take here. Number 1, Cape Verde. Great job. Number 2, Uruguay. Oh, my gosh, terrible job. And number 3, Spain. I mentioned how I was concerned about the Yamal injury. I think that if they were going to draw a game and have one bad performance, they had it in the exact order that I would have liked to see. I think you draw against a Cape Verde team where Yamal barely played, and their defense was just incredible in this tournament, or in the group stage. You smoke Saudi Arabia once Yamal is healthy and playing on the pitch, and then you beat a solid team to win the group in Uruguay. Momentum's going well. I think this Spain team is the Spain team that we expected. So those are my takes for this group. What do you think about what went down?
Yeah, I think Spain going through was expected.
Yeah.
Was it as convincing as we had hoped? Probably not, but, hopefully that they can find that rhythm.
They didn't give up a goal, though.
That's true.
I think that's great sign.
That's true. Going out with 3 clean sheets is definitely good. Maybe a little bit more in terms of the goal producing would be wanted, but no there's always the round of 32 to try and figure that out. Cape Verde, Cinderella story of this tournament, the 67th ranked team in the FIFA World Cup rankings. No matter what happens, I think that this is one of the best stories of this tournament so far. They're going to go on to play Argentina, which I think everyone can kind of imagine how that possibly could go down, although there is a little sliver of hope, because you never know with this team. But they are the first debutante nation to qualify for the knockouts since Slovakia in 2010. They are also the smallest to have ever done it as well. So major props to Cape Verde, and, whatever goes down in this game against Argentina, everybody knows your name now. So great job with what you produced in Group H. And then Uruguay, massive disappointment. And, in that game against Spain, and honestly throughout the tournament, Fernando Muslera, the goalkeeper, he just did not perform the way that he needed to. He let through so many goals that he shouldn't have. That one against Spain, I was just shocked that it actually found the back of the net. Augustin Canobio had that red card in the game against Spain. Tried to run after the refs.
Yeah.
Had to be held back on the sidelines. This team was all over the place. And just a little note, kind of similar to the South Korea situation, the Uruguayan Football Association decided that they were so upset about the group stage exit from Uruguay that the team had their charter jet canceled back to Montevideo, and they must fly commercial, all flying separate flights back down there. So Uruguay, you've got some stuff to figure out.
Yeah, no doubt. And probably the most disappointing. I've said that 3 times already. But, there's been a few disappointing teams, and Uruguay definitely one of them up there. Let's move on to Group I. France won the group at 3-0, 10 goals scored, only 2 allowed. Norway advanced, 2 wins and a loss. Senegal, win and 2 losses. And Iraq, 3 losses. Probably the worst team in this tournament was Iraq, up there with Tunisia, who allowed 12 goals and only scored 1. I want to say one thing here, or a few things. Number one, Senegal, very poor performance. We're very disappointing. And, I mean, Sarr was excellent. Other than that, just some of the messiest football I've seen from any team, especially a team of their caliber. Let's see if they bounce back. France did what they had to do, but they played nobody. And you could say, well, they played Norway. Manny, don't you like Norway? I do like Norway. And I did say that I was excited for that game on Friday. But they played Norway's subs. And Norway seems to have kind of punted that game. And they just gave the group to France because they know that even if they played their starters and they played a war against France, they probably would have lost. And in doing so, you don't rest Holland. You don't rest your main guys. You guys are more tired, and the momentum doesn't feel as – you don't feel as good. Instead, they lost, and they honestly drew a better part of the bracket. I just want to highlight this. Them losing, they find themselves playing Ivory Coast, which I think is a win. And then they find themselves playing Brazil, who is not – I mean, Brazil's good, but, again, not the strongest Brazil team we've seen. If they would have won, they would have played Sweden, which I think – they're a terrible matchup against Sweden because Sweden can score the ball and Norway cannot defend the ball, although they can score. That would have been like a 5-4 game. And then they would have had to play Germany. So it would have been much tougher to get to the quarters and definitely to the round of 16, although I don't think Ivory Coast is terrible. I just think they match up better against Ivory Coast if they would have won than if they would have lost. So I don't know what you think about that, if that's what you would have done. I'm not saying I necessarily agree, but I definitely understand. So very tough and weird group.
Yeah, I agree. I think, looking specifically at that Norway and France game, because there was a lot of controversy that came around it. The fact that Stolbakken had decided to rest pretty much every single starter against that game against France, and the fact that Holland came out before the game and was saying basically along the lines of, yeah, we don't expect to win against France.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we know their side. I still think that it will be good for them to rest. And, France just, they're the one team coming out of this group stage, in that top tier that I'm like, yeah, you look very strong. I don't really see anything that I'm too worried about right now. Dembele got a hat trick against Norway, all within 25 minutes of each other. Like, I know that you were playing against the subs, but still, that is incredibly impressive. And, just to touch upon Senegal quickly as well, they're going to have to go up against Belgium, who is going to prove to be a challenge for them because Belgium started to pick things up a little bit at the end of the group stage. And Senegal, the only kind of confidence that they have is from a 5-0 win against Iraq.
Yeah.
They weren't able to get points against France or Norway. And now they got to go play against a pretty decent Belgium side. Mm-hmm. So I think that Senegal is going to have quite the challenge for themselves. And even if they do make it through to the round of 16, they're probably going to have to play the US. And the way it looks right now, I would place my bets on the US over Senegal in that game. So Group I was definitely one with some major names, and there were some major performances that happened in that group as well. So I think it'll be interesting to see how all three of these teams fare when it comes to the knockout rounds.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll see what's in store for Norway and France and Senegal moving forward. Group J now. Honestly, not much to talk about here, in my opinion, other than Messi being awesome. Argentina.
So we're just calling it Group Messi, to be honest,
Group
at this point.
Exactly. 3-0 Argentina. They scored 8 goals, and 6 of those came from Lionel Messi. Austria finished in second, 1-1-1. Algeria 1-1-1, and Jordan 0-3. Not a great outing for Jordan. I want to say about Argentina real quick, because I don't think the next two teams are going to be relevant for the rest of this tournament, so we don't have to do too much on them. But I'm a little concerned that it has kind of been a one-man show. And Messi has scored in, I believe, 7 straight World Cup games now. And he has 6 goals in this tournament. So that's great. But is that going to continue against excellent teams, which will be able to defend him well? And once Messi kind of has to, delegate a little bit more, are they going to be able to have guys that come through? Just a question mark for Argentina. But other than that, they did what they had to do.
Yeah, exactly. They got all 3 wins. They're coming out with the 9 points. So a good start to the tournament for Argentina. Messi now leading the Golden Boot race with 6 goals. Next person is at 4. So he's got a bit of distance there in terms of that race. And, I do think that a lot of people have been talking about, Messi being the star of the show. But he is the star of the Argentina team. I think at some point you do have to accept that, when you have a star, you build your team around him. And I think that's what they've done. They still managed to get 2 goals. They had Lo Celso and Martinez score in the game against Jordan. So I do think that, if push comes to shove, they have other people who can get the ball in the back of the net. But at the end of the day, it really is all going to be about Messi.
I want to ask one question here. Not much analysis. I'm just curious to see what you say, how you answer this. They play Cape Verde. They play the winner of Australia and Egypt, and then they play most likely either Switzerland or Colombia in the quarters. What percentage of a chance do you give Argentina to be in the semis?
I think Argentina will be in the semis. Looking at that quarter of the bracket,
it's a favorable draw.
Yes, 100%. I
would
say
100%.
I'm saying 100% to being a favorable draw. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No, not 100% to them being in the semis. I would say 100% to it being a favorable draw. I would say right now I'm looking at probably a 70% chance they're in the semis.
70%, 70 to 75.
I think the biggest competition that they're going to have is if they run into Colombia.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they'll beat Colombia. We'll see. That's going to be interesting. Very interesting to talk about. I would love to see that game. Would have rather seen Portugal against Argentina, which I'm going to rant about shortly. We're going to get into that group now, Group K. Colombia, Portugal, Congo, DR, and Uzbekistan. Colombia won 2 wins and a draw. Portugal won 2 draws. Congo 1-1-1. Uzbekistan 0-3, 2 goals and 11 goals allowed. I got to stop coming at these bad teams. But, Colombia, wow. I didn't expect this, personally. We didn't have them as our dark horse. We would have sounded very smart if we talked about Colombia the way that we talked about Turkey. We did not.
Can we go back in time and edit that and make it look like we did?
Well, we can't. So that's unfortunate. Good for them. They took care of business in Miami. An insane crowd. They drew that game. They should have won that game, which I'm going to talk about shortly as well. Portugal disappointing. Congo advances. I mean, a lot to say. I'll go into Portugal later, so I'm going to save my take for later. Nate, what do you got?
Colombia topping this group was not what any of us expected.
No.
But they 100% deserve to top this group. They looked like the best team
100%.
In Group K. Coming off of the win against DR Congo, the win against Uzbekistan, 0-0 draw against Portugal, that was a win for Colombia, I think. You look at the stats from that game, Colombia had 26 shots to 13 for Portugal, 6 shots on goal, 2 to Portugal, and they had that one called offsides, so that they actually scored. So it could have been 1-0. I think that Colombia have a really good chance to make it to the quarterfinals where they would meet Argentina most likely. And then, I would give them a strong shot against Argentina. But I also want to talk about DR Congo because we talked about them last episode and you were talking about how impressed you were about their performance against Portugal. And I'm still impressed with everything that they've done. They got their first World Cup win against Uzbekistan, which was a 3-1 win, sends them to the round of 32 where they're going to play England. And Yohan Wissa, who plays for Newcastle right now, he's had 3 goals this World Cup. The Golden Boot race is going 6 with Messi on the top, then the players who are at 4, and then 3. He could be in the conversation if he can, maybe get, a goal or 2 against England. Personally, I hope he doesn't, but that's only for me. But I think that they're going to give England a really hard time.
Wow, really?
And I think it's because they're a team right now that have nothing to lose and everything to gain. There is zero pressure on this DR Congo team, and they've just been playing really well against teams that are higher ranked than them. They got the draw against Portugal. It was a 1-0 loss to Colombia, but still a 1-0 loss to Colombia against the team who won the group. I would take it. So I think that the England are going to have their hands full with this DR Congo side.
I think you're just an England fan that is scared. I don't think that's going to be the case necessarily. I mean, them going down 1-0 against Uzbekistan, I was like, oh my gosh, there's no way they're going to just blow this. And they took care of business after that. I think it was more, they looked great at the end of that game against Portugal. That I will say. Probably more about the lack of performance from Portugal than it was about Congo. But I do want to give them credit, and it's just they're playing England. I think England's great. Well, you did mention, this was probably off the air, on the phone, how these African teams that play back a very defensive-minded game, it's kind of what England struggles against, which is what they're going to play against Congo, and that's why they drew against Ghana, which we're going to talk about shortly. But yeah, I don't think England's going to have a problem. I think we're going to win 3-0. So.
I'm glad that you're saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to not be as optimistic. Exactly. But I do think that DR Congo has had quite the World Cup run.
So 2 very feel good stories and 1 what the heck in Portugal. Anyways, Group L, England won the group, 2 wins and a draw. What? Croatia 2 wins and a loss. Ghana 1-1-1 and Panama 0-3. We have the English fan here, Niamh. How do you feel about the way this group went down?
I'm happy that we got, first place in that group. Okay. I think it was needed. I think that the win against Croatia really set the tone. But I will say that I don't think that this England team looked the way they did against Croatia in the games against Ghana and Panama. Maybe for the 5 or 10 minutes where they scored against Panama, did they start to look a little bit like they did in that first game. But I thought that they kind of went back to the slow, passive, defensive style that was so, well known under Gareth Southgate. And they kind of went back to that. They let, chances come and go, just didn't take them. And they had no creativity. There was no spark. And thanks to Bellingham and Kane, we managed to get those 2 goals against Panama. But for the rest of the game, I was like, what is going on here? So I'm hoping that they can kind of see the pattern that's happened in these games and figure out, actually, when we were more attacking minded, we actually beat Croatia 4-2. So maybe we need to go back to that. But like I said, I think that DR Congo it's going to be a tough game. I really do hope they come out on top, and I think that the way that they're going to do that is by going back to the style that they played against Croatia.
Do you remember what I texted you after the tie?
Yeah.
What'd I say?
I'm gonna need to pull it up.
I'll just say England is back.
Yeah.
That's what I said.
Yeah.
And
I'm thinking more about what you sent me when it was after the 0-0 draw, and you're like, oh, this is the England we know.
England, something like that. I don't remember. I either said England is back or this is the England we all know and love. I said that jokingly because what I think happened is just natural complacency. When you beat a great team in Croatia, and then you're going up against Ghana and Panama, 2 teams you kind of know once you beat Croatia that you won the group. So it's just kind of taking care of business, and I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because they got too much talent, and I can't get that Croatia game out of my head. I think they're going to look like that against Congo because now they're like, oh my gosh, we got to wake up. This is the year. Because that was the energy I was getting after the first game. So I think it's more mental than anything.
And I think the Ghana game really showed where, the weaknesses for England. If you lock down Harry Kane, how are you going to get everyone else involved? Because there's this picture where there are 4 Ghana defenders surrounding Harry Kane in, basically, someone was, a parallelogram around him right now. And if he's locked down, who else is going to come in and score? And I think we saw Bellingham do that against Panama, but I think that's the one thing that England need to sort out. heading
He's
into
the
knockouts.
X factor, is Bellingham.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. One thing I do want to say, if you want to think pessimistic about England, like a true American, I'm just kidding, is that if that penalty doesn't get called back, if they don't do that penalty again and then they just gave Kane the miss, how does that game against Croatia go? Is it a draw? Do they get a little bit tense? Do they lose? I don't know. I do think that was very important, although I'm very optimistic about England. So whatever, if that diminishes me as an American, it is what it is. I'm just trying to be objective.
He's just trying to help me out, really.
Anyways, let's move on to concerns, which, oh my gosh, this has been a long episode, but we got a little bit left, so thanks for sticking around if you have done so. I want to go into what we're concerned about, what we're excited about in terms of teams for the rest of this tournament. Why is my Word document frozen? Now it's not frozen. Good. Okay, let's talk about first. Niamh, what team are you most excited about going into the round of 32 and forward?
I am very excited to watch the Netherlands play. And I think that their game against Morocco, which we're recording this on Monday, so it's happening tonight at 9, I am going to be locked in for that game because it is against two powerhouses right now. And to get that kind of a matchup in the round of 32 is quite incredible. And I think that, they're coming off of the draw against Japan, the win against Sweden, the win against Tunisia, 10 goals in the group stage. Brian Brobby has been leading the team with 3 goals. You've got Somerville and Gakpo who have 2 goals each. The Netherlands are unbeaten in their 6 World Cup games that they've ever played against African nations, 5 of them being wins, one a draw. And I think that Ronald Koeman, the coach, has said that he wants to adopt a more attacking mindset for this game against Morocco. And I think that that's exactly what they need to do. You're coming out of a group stage where you scored 10 games. Take it to Morocco. Take the game to Morocco, a team who, they got out of the group stage. They got second in a tough group. But I think that the momentum that the Netherlands is on can top Morocco right now. And then, Netherlands getting through. They are now going to play Canada, which we know after they beat South Africa in the round of 32. Most likely after that game would go on to play France or Germany. I think that they have a good path, and I think this game against Morocco is one that I'm really excited to see go down.
I agree. Netherlands has always been a very great soccer nation. They're like the Vikings of soccer or the Bills. They just get to the final and lose. But this is a team that I think can make a run. I agree. I'm going to go into the team I'm most excited about, which I hinted at earlier. The United States of America, who I think will get to a quarter. Sorry for saying I think so much. But yeah, I believe they will get to a quarterfinal. They lost to the best team in the group. Turkey lost does absolutely nothing to me. Or second best team in the group because the United States are the best team in the group. So we both agree that even though Turkey was not playing at the level that we expected for them to play at the pitch, on paper and talent-wise, that was the second best team in the group. They played them with their subs, and they played a brutal first half, yet they still almost won. They should have been a draw until that heartbreaking goal at the end of the game, which not really heartbreaking. I thought it was a crazy overreaction from most of the American media. They rested starters for the most part, did not play their yellow card players. That's a good thing. You're going to have your guys rested, healthy, going into the round of 32. I personally think it's good to face some adversity. I would have been perhaps a little bit more nervous if they didn't rest their guys and they would have beaten Turkey 3-0 and just been smooth sailing, and then boom, you got to play a Bosnia team that's frisky, and if not, you got to go against Belgium. I wouldn't have liked that. I would have been a little bit, that's me thinking glass half full, obviously, after a loss. But I do think that's a thing with athletes. They can get complacent. Even though Pochettino's a great manager, I don't necessarily believe that he wouldn't have been on top of that, but I do think that would have been a concern. Bench players who had about a month without seeing the pitch and had never seen the pitch together in a World Cup game got some minutes, which I think is good. Did they look good? No. Now, how will these players respond? Will they lose confidence, or will they take it as, all right, I was rusty on this play, that play, and that play. Now I know when that situation comes again, I know how to adjust, and they'll feel more confident playing rather than not playing at all, even though they didn't play that well. I think that just depends how the athlete responds. And then with all of that going on in that game, mentioned all the things going against them. They had more shots on goal, and a higher percentage of possession. So the United States, to me, has looked solid in all 3 games, considering the circumstances. And I have not lost any hope at all after the loss against Turkey A. And I do see this team getting to a quarterfinal. I don't think they'll get to a semifinal because Spain is my pick to win it all. But they can make it to a semifinal. I don't think that's completely off the table. So that's a team I'm excited to see.
But don't worry. If the United States do make it to a semis and beat Spain, Manny will gladly give up his pick on the champions for that.
No doubt. No doubt about it. All right, now let's get into a more sour taste or sour tone when it comes to our takes. Who are you most nervous about in this tournament, Niamh?
So the last couple of episodes, I've been saying Brazil. So I'm just going to stick with that theme and say that I'm still nervous for Brazil. And I think they had the draw against Morocco, and they're coming off of 3-0 wins against both Haiti and Scotland. I do believe that Brazil has started to find some rhythm, and they've started to look a lot better. I am going to agree with that. I think Ancelotti's gotten this side to a point where, it's starting to look up for the Brazilian team. They've scored 7 goals in this tournament so far. They've come from Vinicius Jr. and Matias Cunha. Mm-hmm. And that is good for the group stage. Is that enough for the knockouts? Do you need to get more people involved in the pitch? I think that they've grown into the tournament, like I said, but they're going to come up against a really strong Japan team in this round of 32 who are coming into this match with somewhat of a dark horse mentality because they know that they're the underdogs in this game. And do you want to have a Japan team with that thought process is what you have to think about. I think that Japan can give them a good fight, and eventually they might have to go on to play Norway.
Yeah.
That's going to be a tough game. And then after that, according to the rankings, they would most likely go on to play England or Mexico, which again is incredibly tough for them. So I think that if they can make it through the Japan game and the Norway game unscathed, then I think that they have a really strong chance. But is this rhythm that Ancelotti is talking about and this momentum that they have coming off of wins from Haiti and Scotland going to be enough for a Japan team who arguably had tougher competition in their group stage and did a great job with that, or is it going to be too late? So I think that's the biggest question for Brazil. Is this momentum that they have coming too late, or is it going to continue and give them enough to power through what looks to be a really difficult draw for them?
I personally, I agree with a lot of what you said, but I do think Cunha has been excellent. Only 191 minutes played, and he has 3 goals. So he looks awesome. That's a good sign, and I do trust their coach. Other than that, though, a lot of reason to be concerned. There's no way you think that Mexico is going to get past England. I know you kind of hinted at that there. And if they do, Brazil would have a sigh of relief because I think Brazil would take care of Mexico.
Part of being an England fan is being pessimistic as well. So.
And the reason, by the way, because one would argue, oh my gosh, if Mexico gets to a quarterfinal, there's no way. One would think they might win against a team like Brazil because they'd probably be at home, but they won't be at home. They'd be in Miami. So I don't think that. I would be terribly concerned for Brazil against England. I think they would lose that game. But yeah, I could they lose earlier? Possibly. One team that I do think is going to lose pretty early is Portugal. Suffered a draw. It was Colombia's first draw ever in the World Cup, by the way. We didn't mention that. In their 25th match ever. So we saw some history. But Portugal had their shots doubled, as we said, by Colombia. Colombia tripled the shots on goal. Their first corner against Colombia came in the 80th minute. So their attack was just not good. 55-45 possession Colombia's way. Only scored against Uzbekistan. So your +5 goal differential for me does nothing. I thought they were pressing a lot against Colombia. And one thing I want to know, I don't want to make this the Ronaldo trash hour because he's not even on my notes too much when it comes to this rant. But I will say this. I am not someone who thinks that the athletes have to be super duper polite to the media. I didn't care about the rudeness from Ronaldo to the media. But what that reaction revealed to me, and the reaction I'm talking about is the reaction he had to a question about Messi and the rest of the goal scorers in this tournament. What that reaction revealed to me after his brace is that he's thinking about it. And that's not a good thing. Because if he's thinking about it, that means he's showing it with his body language on the pitch, maybe in practice. He's not being a leader that he's supposed to be because he's being a little bit self-centered, which sounds rude, but it's just kind of what he's been his whole career. And I think Ronaldo's probably the second greatest player to ever play the most popular sport of all time. He's awesome. But I am concerned about the fact that not only is this team pressing, but he's pressing. And I thought he revealed that there. The midfield, which is supposed to be the greatest midfield of all time, has been awful. Neves, Vitinha, and Fernandez averaged a 5.1 player rating versus Colombia, which I know people don't like player rating that much. But I think it's a kind of a telling stat. And if you watch that game, you can tell. And once you see the shots and you see the way they attacked, you can tell that they were not playing well. So I do trust the player rating, that they were pretty mid. In fact, maybe below mid, especially to their standards. So they haven't figured it out at all in terms of team chemistry. They are a hard team to watch, which I didn't expect because I had this team making a final. I picked this team to make the final. There's no way that's happening. No way. In fact, I think Croatia is going to beat them. I'm shocked that they're this bad.
Yeah, I mean, a round of 32 game against Croatia, another one to keep an eye on. But you're talking about the fact that Portugal have no team chemistry. They're not together.
Zero.
But then you're going up against a Croatia team that have basically all been playing together since 2016, 2018 and have that camaraderie. So I think that kind of togetherness that Croatia have and kind of the trend that they've been on at the end of the group stage is enough to take down Portugal.
I think Croatia's going to win. I wasn't concerned about the way they looked against England. I thought they looked a little bit old, but England was just excellent. It was more about the excellence of England in that game. Portugal has not looked good at all. Not one. That brace against Uzbekistan for me does nothing. The 5 goals does nothing for me. Nothing. So, yeah, and if they do if they do win against Croatia, which obviously is on the table, they're the favorite. But if they do win that game, I don't see them beating Spain. No way. So I think Portugal's ceiling, which is crazy because I literally picked them to win. And part of the reason that I picked them to make the final is because I didn't see them losing this group. They would have had a path that included Ghana, which I would have picked. Obviously, we would have picked them. Ghana, the winner between Switzerland and Algeria, and then a quarterfinal against Argentina, which would have been awesome. I was rooting for Portugal, not because I wanted to be right, but because I wanted to see the most hype soccer game maybe ever. And we just didn't get it.
Nope.
So I'm angry. Personally, I'm very angry about the way that it went down, and you can tell by my tone. It is what it is, I guess. See you in 4 years. I think they're done. I think they're dead.
Yeah.
So that's sucks. We're probably gonna get a lot of hate for that. I definitely am. Anyways, a lot. We went through a lot. Went over a lot. About an hour and maybe 4 or 5-ish minutes.
Yeah.
So if you watch this whole thing, you like us too much. We appreciate that though. Niamh, any closing comments?
No, thank you everyone for listening. If you did make it this far, I hope that you enjoyed our chats about the group stage. Can't believe 72 games that we made it through. That is quite the amount. But we're kind of getting to the end here, and we're gonna have some good games, some good round of 32 games. Make sure to watch some good round of 16 games, And we'll be back again to tell you everything that we think for those ones.
Shout out to Canada, by the way. That's already in the round of 16. I don't even know if we mentioned that. So we already have one game in. Anyways.
The first home nation to play outside of their home.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, I didn't think of that. That's hilarious. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. As Niamh said, this was the 3rd episode of the Pirates in the Field podcast World Cup edition. Soon we're going to be in MetLife. So that's a lot of fun. Other than that, for now, we're going to just enjoy the games from home and hope that you guys do the same. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. God bless.